Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today I want to do something different with you guys. I'm bringing you gameplay of a top 500 Luna Snow. I built her up in anticipation of her tier 3, slapped on a CTP of energy, so I wanted you guys to see just how much she can do and how well she plays. We're going to start off with some world boss action against all of the different bosses. We're going to rock this team for the majority of the time. We got the 60% cold leadership, we got Coulson's tier 2 passive, and we get the double all attack buffs for 10% added. We're going to slap on just some regular strikers here because we're not necessarily trying to show the absolute peak of the character's abilities. Just want you to see what your investment would look like. If you did top 500 Luna Snow and you're an average player, this is what, or slightly above average player with better cards or raid level or what have you, this is what you can expect. Proxima, starting it off, is obviously a really difficult fight, not one that you actually want to attempt even at stage 30 because she has very high energy defense, but I wanted to highlight through a couple of deaths, through a couple of just bad gameplay moments, that Luna Snow is really not fitted for these types of bosses because she has a lot of directional attacks, Luna Snow, that leave her right in front of the enemy. She only has one movement skill on her fourth that actually moves her side to side laterally, so it's actually really garbage. And so she gets one-shotted a lot, and she just puts herself in really bad positions. Speaking of putting yourselves in bad positions, we got Cull Obsidian up next. This one is much better for her. It's a much more well-suited stage because he has lower energy defense than physical defense. But still, the problem that you're going to see with a lot of these bosses, and unfortunately her uniform just didn't solve enough of those issues, is survivability. Even with 2 heals, even with 2 iframes, even with 5 seconds of immunity, you would think that's enough, but unfortunately it's not. Because she's a speed type Luna Snow, she has low base defenses and low base HP, which makes her very fragile. Now, of course, I still have a couple of her gears to get to 25. We only got the first and the fourth one up, but yeah, she gets 2 or 3 shotted for the majority of boss interactions once you get past stage 30, which is really honestly unacceptable. Her tier 3 hopefully will fix that. I'm looking forward to something like 10 seconds of invincibility like Thor has on his, which would really help her. Alternatively, it would be really cool if they added a new type of tier 3 skill that gave a group heal to everyone in the party for the duration of the tier 3 skill, so much more defensive minded. Picture Sharon Rogers' tier 3 skill, how it has that bubble, but instead of the bubble giving you immunity and damage reduction, it gives you a fat, continuous heal. I don't know if they want to go that way for the character, but I feel like Luna Snow, honestly, right now, she fits in this weird little niche where she's obviously the best speed female character, and she is one of the only good speed heroes that has energy damage, speed characters that has energy damage, but she just doesn't dominate any game mode except for the ABX day that she's been played for. And of course, she doesn't even dominate the male day, which is controlled by either Winter Soldier or Quicksilver, or in some cases, for some people, Deadpool. Now, she can outscore some of those heroes now with level 70, and of course she will with her pending tier 3, but it's just kind of frustrating. I don't really see a well-defined moment for her, kind of like Sharon Rogers. She's good, she hits like a damn truck, but she can't take a hit for Jack, and if PvP is not her game, then I don't know what is. This one's a bit more impressive. This was a stage 40 Corvus clear. Not quite a clear because I still have to do a couple of other world boss ultimates, but this is probably where she's going to shine more for you if you want to see that kind of production from her. She shreds this stage quite easily. You will notice from the top middle to top right hand corner, I did switch up 3 of the strikers for ignore dodge. She only has 40% ignore dodge from her CTP and my cards, so she definitely needs the extra 60% to hit that 100% cap. But against Corvus, she does pretty well. I do have to modify her skill rotation against most of the world bosses compared to her ABX rotation. Of course, this is all assuming her newest uniform, which looks amazing. She's thick as fuck, but it's kind of garbage in terms of the skill rotations. So the rotation that I'm using for this one, if you haven't caught it already, is 1 into 3 for the actual proc, the damage. So that's what you want to start your rotation with. and then I immediately go into the 5th skill to give her immunity, and then that's where I try to sneak in 2 and 4. Now, because she has the refreshing ability on her 1st, 2nd, and 3rd skill, it is kind of awkward because sometimes you will get that refresh. For example, after 5 you do 2, and then you get the refresh on 1. You're so tempted to get that extra damage in by doing the 1st skill. The problem with that is that it delays the next proc, because if you use the 1st skill, then it won't be on the same timer cooldown as the 3rd skill, and then you don't have something to trigger your 3rd skill proc and you can lose it. So there's basically 2 ways of playing Luna Snow. You can either very closely follow the proc and just kind of have to kite around, which is kind of awkward, and which is part of the reason why her survivability is so garbage, because there's a clear gap between the end of her 5th skill with such a long cooldown, it's almost 9 seconds, and then the iframes on 1 and 3. There's a noticeable gap of at least a second, so you do have to kite, you do have to dodge, you will possibly get hit and get dunked and die, but that is the way that you play if you want to maintain the highest DPS in terms of damage and in terms of consistency. If you just want to go ham sandwich, you just spam her skills, and basically you can loosely follow 1 3 5 4 2, but you'll end up doing 1 3 5 4 2 1 3 2 1 kind of thing. And just bounce around. Here against Thanos, the damage is on display again. She hits him very hard even at stage 20 with suboptimal strikers, so she could definitely hit him harder or possibly do a slightly higher stage. I didn't go through and do the entire stage because it is very difficult, and you do have to wait through a lot of different animations with Corvus and Proxima, and then Thanos himself with the meteors, and then Cull Obsidian and Ebony Maw. But at least as far as DPS goes, she's absolutely able to clear this stage. Getting him down to 15 bars in under a minute is the kind of benchmark for high DPS characters on this stage, so the damage is definitely not the problem. It's just the combination of the survivability and just the positioning and the kind of discipline on how you're going to do her rotation. But it is nice to see, and honestly, playing her as much as I did for, over an hour to compile this footage, it does feel as though Netmarble wanted to make an ice skater character. They wanted to make someone like Kim Yuna, if you're familiar with Korean sports skaters, and this is what they came up with Luna Snow. Does that make her better at the game? No, not really. It kind of hurts her value because her 4th skill is so stupid. And her 2nd skill is honestly kind of stupid as well. I like the damage of her 2nd skill. It looks cool to zip back and forth. But if they made the 3rd skill, invincibility for 3 seconds, or if they gave her an iframe on her 3rd skill, or her 2nd skill, it would be a lot better. Here on stage 40, I get clapped. The other frustrating thing about Luna Snow is that the CTP of energy is by far the best CTP for her in terms of offensive ability, because she has so many hits on so many skills, so it's easy to hit that chain and then rack up a bunch of extra damage. But holy crap, does she get guard broken like crazy. And Ebony Maw is definitely the boss to highlight how often she gets guard broken. If you were paying attention, she got guard broken against Cull Obsidian as well, but this one is particularly painful with the spikes that he throws out, in addition to those stupid pillars that come out of the ground to screw you. It's frustrating, and so a CTP of Destruction would probably be better overall for her, and that is something you definitely should consider if she gets a very PvP meta tier 3 ability. She doesn't have any penetration yet at all on any of her skills, so we'll have to see. She's almost guaranteed to get penetration on her tier 3 skill because everyone does, but it's something to keep an eye on if you are considering that, because she absolutely needs the guard break ability. The guard break immunity, you can see there I just got rocked again, but on the plus side, she did do pretty decently. This is a full push with almost max strikers. I don't know why I put Gambit in there on second thought, but I'm always hoping for that 5th skill to pop and lower his defenses. But we got Scarlet, we got Deadpool, we got Sharon, we got Psylocke. So this is almost the highest that she can go, again with a good leadership and a good tier 2 support. Stage 50, I think she can do very close to stage 50, and possibly, pretty much definitely when she gets her tier 3. Possibly if you can time your procs better and you are a bit luckier and a bit less lag, I think she might be able to do stage 50. Keep in mind, I have almost 275 raid level, so it's very, very high. If you're a lot lower than me, you'll find that you'll struggle more, even if you have a similar build. But she does pretty well damage-wise. It's just frustrating that her skill rotation has to become suboptimal in order to increase her survivability. Unlike Sharon Rogers, where her skill rotation has changed a bit, but it seems as though her damage hasn't suffered for it, and her survivability is still quite good, I feel as though Luna is just kind of a step behind Sharon Rogers. So, whereas a lot of us have the same complaints about Sharon, that she's kind of a sitting duck, as a blast type, she can take the hits a little bit better, I feel like, and she also has that 30% native damage reduction on her Tier 2 passive, which I think is really underrated. And you can see the difference in a character like Luna Snow versus Sharon Rogers, despite having similar numbers defensively. It's a huge difference, and you can't get hit. If you get hit, it basically spells defeat for you, and so oftentimes you have to make bad decisions. In terms of mistiming your proc, in terms of just spamming skills out of order in order to keep her alive. There, I just died from one big hit, and so we tried it again, but it is terribly challenging to keep her alive amid all of the animations, amid the jumping around, and amid just 2 iframes. The one thing I did notice through extended gameplay, and I want to give you guys as a tip, is her first skill. It seems as though they've extended the iframe a little bit. I didn't actually test it against her non-uniform first skill, so it may be exactly the same, but I have noticed that the iframe lingers after she jumps over the boss, after she lands. It lingers for about a half second. So if you are used to canceling that first skill right away, but you're finding that you're dying too much, hold that first skill just a little bit longer, and then let it go. Let it go for the third skill. That's my only Frozen reference, I promise. And then you will hopefully be able to keep her alive long enough to kill your enemy. But I am curious what you guys think in terms of her Tier 3 skill and what Netmarble could do at this point to kind of salvage this character. I don't really know where she's going to end up in terms of her value and in terms of what game mode she'll become dominant in once she gets her Tier 3. Sharon Rogers has found a home, of course. That was just a stupid mistake. Sharon Rogers, of course, found a home in Giant Boss Raid and some high-level World Boss Ultimate, and of course she cranks out ABX, but I feel like right now Luna Snow might be only good for ABX, which is kind of disappointing. That was a stage 50 push for Corvus. I died, but I did miss a lot of procs. I don't want to show you guys the whole clip because it is kind of boring, but that is kind of her top level. This is probably the one that you guys are the most interested in if you're following Luna Snow for competitive gameplay. This is ABX. Now, I am not a top-level ABX player by any means. I'm probably close to the average for a top 16 alliance in terms of weekly score, but I don't pride myself on coming up with new rotations or perfecting them or anything like that. So if you're looking for the absolute best tips for ABX, maybe hit up my Discord and ask people what they think. But here I'm trying to follow the 1-into-3 rotation. I also tried previously 5-3, but I found that it was a bit less consistent because the 5 and the 3 are on such different cooldowns compared to 1 and 3, which basically can always be cooldowned together because they have such short cooldowns. 1 is on a 3-second cooldown, and the third skill is on about a 6.5 to 7-second cooldown. So you kind of get 2 1s per 3, which is a nice way of keeping track of it yourself. But I think at minimum, I'd be getting about 1.5 million, which is a nice score if you're kind of just spamming buttons, which I felt like I was doing at portions of this fight. So yeah, if you want to be competitive but you're not good in terms of sticking to rotations, you can look forward to at least 1 million points with the right build and the right cards, and of course a level 30 alliance to help you out with that, and the buffs and all that stuff. But we do end up pushing a little bit past 1.5, which does mean that my potential is probably a little bit closer to 2, probably a little bit closer to 1.7 or 1.8. I don't know, but I do still need to test what she's going to be able to do without her uniform, given this build, because I just built this and did this video for you guys without testing without the uniform. But I think for at least half of the players that I've spoken to, they can get as good, if not a better score without the uniform for ABX with the same build. And I mean, the uniform does add some additional stats. I have the 5th option on my uniform statted for crit rate, so I do lose a few percentage points of crit rate, but otherwise everything is already maxed out except for attack speed. Skill cooldown, ignore defense, that kind of stuff is already maxed out, so it's not like it's not like the uniform is a requirement to hit those two important caps. Now, keep that in mind if you are going to be switching back and forth. Ignore defense and skilled cooldown basically need to be capped. The nice thing is she can cap both pretty easily with her new uniform, but it would be nice to see some stat buffs. I think that's another thing that Luna Snow is kind of missing. Sharon got a 25% crit rate buff to go along with her damage buff that she gets on her third skill. Luna Snow still doesn't have any buffs. She has heals, sure, but she doesn't have any self buffs in terms of attack speed, damage reduction, anything like that. So, yeah, I don't know. It just kind of feels like a character that's missing something, and I guess they don't want as much power creep from Sharon to Luna, but Luna was extremely OP when she came out, at tier 1 especially, so I'm not really sure what they were going for. But yeah, the Ice Skater thing feels as though it's the only thing that they knew for sure, aesthetically speaking, and then this is what we've got. So yeah, if you're a big Ice Skater fan, a big skater boy, stop. If you're a big fan of skating on ice and not hockey, cool, man. Yeah, Canadians. So there's that. But in terms of her value, I don't know. I feel as though it just doesn't really warrant right now compared to, I mean, even Ghost Panther. This final one is at first a death, but this is Giant Boss Raid, and I wanted to, well, yeah, highlight her lack of survivability, but then also her damage. It's not as flashy as some of these other characters, but it is consistent, and as long as you are very careful with your iframes, again, using 1 and 3 super defensively to trigger procs. I did a lot of 1-3-1 as well, and then using the 5 to protect, you should be okay. My advice to you, if you're having trouble with Luna Snow in Giant Boss Raid, but you want to use her, is to slow down, and honestly, at times, just stand there. There were times where I was just waiting for certain skills to be on cooldown, and you'll see that throughout the fight. And I know that if I just go in there and try to use 2 or 4, she's basically just going to die, because 2 and 4 leave her so open to getting hit, and she basically can't tank any damage whatsoever. So definitely take it slow, almost like Thor. Imagine if Thor didn't have his guard break on his third skill, you'd have to play him kind of differently, and you'd have to rely on the iframe from 1 and the immunity from 5. It's kind of like that, but you can see there 20 million damage in about a minute is really respectable, especially given that I'm only using 1 support and I'm using Wasp. So I could be using a better leadership. I could be using Misty Knight, but then I wouldn't have the debuff. So we wanted to play it safe. I didn't want to get killed by my teammates or any kind of bullshit like that. But she is able to do it. She's able to kind of grind through if you're very careful. You also have to anticipate the jumping a little bit when he leaps into the air, because those can absolutely one-shot Luna from full health or almost full health. And especially if you don't have any HP on cards. I'm pretty low on HP on cards. I have about 9%. If you're not, you know, tanked there. I have 1 HP Uru as well, for those of you that are interested. She will get basically one-shotted, and the heal almost never triggers on her 4th skill because you never let it cast all the way through. So you're only relying on that 1 heal of 6,000 that she gets at the end of her 5th skill. And that's another thing that kind of bugs me about the character. A lot of people like to point out that she has 2 heals. She kind of doesn't have any heals, because a lot of times you cancel her 5th skill right at the beginning in order to trigger multiple different attacks simultaneously, and then you don't get the heal. And her 4th skill, let's be honest, you're not going to get the heal because you're not going to cast that thing all the way to the end the majority of the time. So she basically rocks 0 heals functionally if you're playing her for maximum DPS. Now you can not play her for maximum DPS, and you can just play her super defensively, but then again, you have to, as the player, you have to sub-optimize your gameplay in order to get the most out of characters' abilities. So that's one thing where I think, not only as far as Luna Snow, but as far as other characters, I can think of Scarlet Witch with the end of her 5th skill, having the mind damage buff. Putting buffs at the end of skills is pretty stupid from a design perspective, and I honestly think it limits the way that you play a character, because oftentimes the buff itself is worth more than canceling it, except for Extreme Alliance Battle, because the Frost Beast almost never kills you. It's really hard to die in Extreme Alliance Battle unless you're playing a paper-thin character. And so for every other game mode, World Boss, you know, PvP, GBR, this game mode, you're basically tying one hand behind your back. Because if you want to survive, you have to rely on the heals. If you have to rely on the heals, you have to go through and not cancel your skills and play in a kind of a bizarre way, which to me, I don't know, it's kind of refreshing on the one hand because I'm so used to just spamming all the character skills like Strife and Apocalypse and Cable and just go, 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 go. But then on the other hand, you feel as though you could be doing more and you could be more aggressive. And I also think from a philosophy, from a design philosophy perspective, Luna Snow's 1, 2, and 3 skills and the fact that the Encore from her 4-star passive triggers them to refresh, it honestly feels as though the character is fighting against itself, because the design is like, okay, don't cancel the 5th skill because you want the heal. Don't cancel the 4th skill because you want the heal and you want the charm effect. But absolutely cancel 1, 2, and 3 spasming like a maniac because you want to get those extra casts in because the skills will refresh with a 60% chance. So I feel like they should either make it a guarantee that it refreshes so that you can design your skill rotations more effectively around the guarantees of it, or they need to get rid of it altogether. I personally would like them to just rework her 4-star passive and make it different, but that's just me. Let me know what you guys think of this type of video. Let me know if you want to see more or less. Subscribe if you enjoy the content and you want to support me. And of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.